empowering minds, amplifying voices, and transforming lives. This is the Untold Stories of Hope podcast, brought to you by the Destiny Connect Foundation. Your hosts, Zion Enogeu and Puffy Medupe.
All right, Sani Bonani, Abusheni, Bonjour, all over the world. This is an amazing one. Hey, what can I say? I just feel excited. It's a lovely day, sunny, bright. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, wherever you are globally. Welcome to Untold Stories of Hope podcast, brought to you by Destiny Connect Foundation, where we empower minds, we amplify voices, and definitely we transform lives. That's what we do. There's a platform where we bring different guests all over the world so they can, tell their own unique stories. We uncover real stories that inspire, stories that encourage, ignite transformation, and they remind us of the power within. That's what we do. And today's episode is deeply personal because we are talking to a phenomenal, leader. She's not only looking so good, but she's also a very powerful candidate. She's a voice of clarity in a noisy world, and she's a woman who's helping individuals and also organizations break free from these invisible barriers, especially the ones that are within. Our guest today, who can it be other than Maiyo Febi, the founder the founder and the managing director of Maiyo Febi and Associates. And, she just advocates in a way of niche growth consultancy focused on career growth and leadership. She's quite a leader. I've spoken to her before because I've seen her background. I've seen the work that she does, even on the public space. But beyond the titles and achievements, Maiyo brings something even more powerful today to all our viewers and listeners. A message that challenges the way we see ourselves and the way we understand life, where we can be reshaped and we can rise above circumstances. So today we are diving into the discussion whereby we are talking to her about the inner critic that is not your enemy, how to reframe the voice that holds you back. Welcome, Maiyo Febi. You are more than welcome in this space. My name is Puffy Medupe. I'm here in South Africa, and I'm welcoming you into our podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for the heartwarming introduction. Really humbling, and I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and I'm really glad, when I look at your biography, when I look at the work you do, in public speaking, in leadership, in helping other people reshape themselves, and also you are mostly on the ground in different radio stations. I mean, it takes me to a journey of personal transformation, and journey of inner transformation. I always give my story, Maiyo, on this platform, how I was broken before and how I was not, a person that I am today. But I'm really excited because whatever we're going to talk about, it's going to help someone else who's in a position that I was in before. Now, take us back to a moment in your life where your inner critic was at its loudest. What was happening and how did it affect you emotionally?
I love your vulnerability, I must say, around talking about how you were broken and it led you to where you are now. And just feel the need to say that brokenness often leads to our greatness if we embrace it. Yeah, and I've been on that journey, and so many people as well have been on that journey in that particular order. But coming back to your question, so a time that my inner critic was the loudest was when I decided to start my business. When I was handing in my resignation letter at MultiChoice with the idea of starting a business. And it was incredibly loud because it was saying to me that, but you can't start a business. Who's going to buy from you? Who's going to believe that they need to pay you money to give them services? Nobody in your family has ever started a business. So who are you now to stand up and think that you can do this thing?
You're going to do it.
There were so many voices just telling me I can't do it. And the loudest thing that it was saying is that I'm not smart enough. I'm not clever enough.
I'm so intrigued by what you said. Brokenness leads to greatness. And sometimes we don't even realize that those moments of brokenness is actually what led us to be in this space. And I'm glad that You speak as someone who really has become a new cycle carrier of greatness within your family. Like you're saying that when you started a business, you know, there was opposition to say, how can you do this? Why do you think you can do this? Now, was there a defining moment when you realized that this voice in your head was not the truth, but
Yeah.
something you could challenge? What shifted you in that particular moment?
So interestingly, when we pay attention in our lives, there's often voices, there's people, there's
Yeah,
things around us that are guiding us to a particular point. So
yeah.
what helped me shift was this workshop that I went on. And
Wow.
in the workshop, it was teaching us how to challenge our inner critic. So when I looked at the voice that was saying, I am not good enough, I'm not clever enough, what happened then was I started interrogating that voice. I started asking, is it true that I'm not clever enough? And where did I get this idea that I'm not clever enough? And when I looked back, it actually came from my father. So as parents, we say things in the midst of our anger or frustration, or we're just having mild reflections, right? But as young people, as children, what we do is whatever our parents say, we tend to lock it in our hearts and we keep it there. So once upon a time, my father said to me as a young woman, he said to me, but you know what, Maiyo, you're not that clever. Clever people need to read books a lot, and you don't really like reading books. So that locked in my mind, and it set me on this course of forever reading, forever learning, forever growing and discovering, just to prove that point. So even though my father, I wasn't in my father's house anymore, that line of thinking continued to stay with me up until that point when I was in that workshop. And finally, I stopped and I looked at this voice that was saying, you're not clever enough. You're not clever enough. When I looked at it and I interrogated it, I realized that it was not true, but it was just a belief that I'd held for so long. Because if it was true that I wasn't clever enough, then how come I had degrees to my name? How come I had certificates to my name? How come I was leading a team across Africa? How come I was getting opportunities to work in amazing organizations if I wasn't clever enough? So in that moment, that's when I decided to choose something different for myself.
I'm really amazed by that. How certain things that have been said to us, they can lock in our minds and we believe them. Someone once said to me, the truth or the lie you believe shapes you. And I understand where you're coming from, especially in a background whereby, like you are saying, that if it's a parent who says something to you, it stays because you believe them, you trust them. And whatever they say, whether it's positive or negative towards you, but it gets stuck in you. Now, you are here, you are this great leader globally, you are recognized because of the work that you do in leadership as a public speaker. You mentioned something about taking a persistent action to enable your success. What did that look like, especially on your hardest days when giving up felt easier?
Wow. So I've always had this dynamic relationship with God, the divine, whatever you want to call it, right? And at a very young age, I asked the divine, I said, it's not fair how there's certain imbalances in the world, right? Certain races have more privilege than other races, certain gender have more privilege, certain ages, etc. And then I asked the divine, what do I have that will always be in my control? Because if you are loving, as they've told me, you are a loving God, then how do you level the playing field for all of us? And then the answer that came to me at that young age was that you always have to persist and focus on what you can do in any given moment. You have to take responsibility and ownership for yourself and never, ever, ever blame anyone for the way your life is because it's in your hands. So tying that back to your question, that then set in motion this resilience, this desire in me that no matter what happens in life, I can always do something. It doesn't matter how broken I am, it doesn't matter how discouraged I am, it is always in my hands to get up and take, even if it's one step, but just to take that step and trust that the next step will follow itself. So my resilience is deeply rooted in my sense of self accountability and my relationship with the higher power of understanding that we are all equal in that regard, specifically, that we can always do something. We always have the choice to do something. So that's what's kept me going, even in the darkest days.
If you've just joined us now, this is Untold Stories of Hope podcast brought to you by Destiny Connect Foundation with me, Puffy Midupi, all the way from South Africa. I have the phenomenal Maiyo Febi. You know, this is where we empower minds, amplify voices, and transform lives, man. Don't forget that you can follow Destiny Connect Foundation in all our platforms, whether it's social medias, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. You can just say Destiny Connect Foundation, or you can say info@destinyconnectfoundation.org. That's our emails, whereby you can liaise with us, visit our website, get more information about the podcast and the lovely guests that we are hosting. Maya, you mentioned something about self-accountability. I love that because I remember one of the things that really held me back for so long, it was not accepting where I am and the responsibility to get myself out of the situation. I would always do the same. Why am I here? Why did I find myself facing these injustices or whatever the problems I'm facing? But now let's talk about challenges, growth, and breakthrough, especially in your own experience. What is one personal struggle or setback that shaped the woman that you are today? And what did it teach you about resilience and self mastery? Because that's very much important.
So many things, and I'm thinking, which one should I pick now? That's why I'm not answering immediately. I'd have to say it was divorce. Yeah, I'll go with divorce. So going through a divorce really required me to self-reflect and ask, why am I here? Because with any difficult situation, especially with something like divorce, it's so easy to blame the other person, right? To say, he doesn't do this, he treats me bad, he is supposed to be doing that, etc., etc. And we play victim within the relationship. So going through that experience, it really taught me the importance of looking at what I contributed to the situation. So whatever situation we find ourselves in, whether we can't get a job or we're in a terrible work environment, etc., we must always ask ourselves, what's within my power? What have I contributed? And what can I change within this situation? So as I did that reflection, it then required me to restart my life all over again in so many different ways, right? And that's where that resilience came in, that self-resilience, which ties to what we were talking about before, to say that we always have it within our power to do something. And with self-mastery in particular, I had to do the inner work of looking at my emotions, how I regulate myself, how I respond to difficult situations, and how can I respond in a way that serves me. And going deeper into that as well, there was also a lot of fear that I used to carry within myself. I didn't realize until I got divorced that I moved through the world with a lot of fear. And it was so deep, it was so buried that I wasn't even aware that that was what was at my core. And going back to what we said at the beginning, difficult situations always bring out the best in you, especially if you allow it to. So the more broken you are, is the greater you can become if you allow that brokenness and that pain to transform you. So yeah, definitely it was going through the divorce that really brought me face to face with just how resilient I can be, and also reflecting on the self mastery and choosing what it is that I want for my life.
You know, I'm glad you spoke about, when something doesn't work out, really not blaming the next person, but looking at what were your contributions towards either the success or the failure of something, which is okay. And I really admire that, because really it clearly shows how much of a great leader you are. If that self mastery has put you in that position of saying, okay, it's not really about the next person, it's also about me. And the fear that you spoke about, Maiyo, many people feel stuck because of fear and self doubt.
Mm.
Since we are talking about the inner critic not being your enemy, what lies did you believe that your inner critic told you, that you had to unlearn those lies so that you can be able to step in your purpose? Surely there are things that we believe that we are not supposed to. Surely there are lies we believe that we are not supposed to. But what are those inner critics? What are those lies that you had to unlearn and be able to get into your purpose?
So many lies, and we've already mentioned some of them, where I believe that I wasn't smart enough, and other lies that I believe were money is not good, money is evil. I believed that people who have money must have accumulated that money in dubious ways. And with each of the lies that I believed, I had to go into that lie and see what was the root of it, and then choose something different for myself. And another lie that I believed was that I'm ugly. And I know that might be strange, because people always tell me that I'm beautiful. But at some point, I really believed that I was ugly. And because I believed that, I was always comparing myself to other people. And when you compare yourself to other people, it kills your energy, right? It kills your confidence, in the smallest of ways, and over time in really big ways. And other lies that I believed were, you have to earn love. You have to earn God's love in particular. And then that also set me on a path of analyzing my spiritual beliefs, my religious beliefs. And I realized that they were built on hand me down religion. So I didn't understand my spirituality for myself and what made sense to me, but I was running on the beliefs that were instilled in me at a very young age. So undoing all of that and understanding what love is, who God is, what God is for myself, was really a game changer in my path.
That's really powerful, Maiyo. And I really appreciate that, because the next thing that I'm going to talk to you about, actually, normally when we enter into the podcast, we want you from the beginning to tell us what do you do, because the viewers and the listeners want to know more about you. But because of this question, we are now going to divert into that. I'm going to ask you that around the diversity or the work that you do in for diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, how do you see the inner critic affecting people who are underrepresented or marginalized groups? This is where people have to know, what do you do exactly, and how do you stand for them? How do you come in for diversity, for inclusion, for equity, for belonging, especially people who are underrepresented, people who feel as though they are not giving the platform to speak. Now, Maiyo, you are here, and this is the work that you are doing, and this is how you come in to become a voice of those people.
Mm. The first thing that I do, especially in context of organizations, because that's where I primarily do my work, is helping businesses understand their strategies. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging should always be linked to an organizational strategy and to the organization's values. So if that's not in place, then the first step is to see how to integrate that into the strategy and into the values of the organization. Once that's in place, then it's about having conversations, it's about having dialogues with the different groups within an organization. So tying it to the underrepresented people within organizations and even within society at large, it's about first understanding where they're at right now and not making assumptions about what their situation is, because it's very easy to impress what I think is a challenge for certain groups and run with that and advocate for that when really in their world it's not a challenge. So having those honest conversations with them for my own understanding, and also for employees within an organization to understand the contexts of the people around them, is also very important in a workshop facilitated context, because when people get marginalized, sidelined, etc., the people that are sidelining them and marginalizing them are often not aware, believe it or not, because of unconscious bias. We all have unconscious bias in some shape, in some form. For example, if we see a white man walking past us, there will be certain things playing in our mind. Oh, he's privileged. Oh, he's a farmer. Oh, he must be rich, etc. And same thing when we see a black person walk past. There's all sorts of stories that we play about the individual, whether they're tall, whether they're a little bit overweight, based on how they speak. When we hear an accent, we make assumptions about people. So when you look at marginalized groups within organizations, depending on our unconscious bias, it'll influence how we treat those people. So my point of departure is always to educate people about different people, because even the people that are marginalized also have unconscious bias and are ill-treating other people within the organization. So it really begins with education and understanding that in as much as we have unconscious bias, we always have it within our power to choose differently. Because sometimes it's not about making the unconscious bias going away and vanishing because they're so deeply entrenched in us. But it's simple things like if you're sitting in a meeting, for example, and there's somebody who speaks English very well, and there's somebody who you can hear, they're a foreigner, they're struggling to speak English. It's very easy for us to ignore that person because of unconscious bias. Because one of the biases that most people have is if you speak English as close to the English people as possible, you must be clever. You must be educated. You must be smart. But if you speak English with a strong Zulu accent or a strong Xhosa accent, we don't have time. We don't want to focus too much on what you're saying. Let's focus on the smart people. So
They
having
say you are not clever enough.
yeah. So having awareness around that prompts you to choose differently, so that when you see that unconscious bias rising up in your mind, you notice it. And within those split seconds, you're able to choose differently and something that's more inclusive. Yeah.
You know, Maiyo, you are so correct. I'm looking at, you kept bringing this word privileges because there are so many people who think they are either not privileged or they are privileged enough. And let's look at the workplaces. In your experience, we've got so many people who are fighting internal battles in workplaces, and they don't feel like they belong completely, especially in the corporate world. You
Yeah.
know, how can leaders begin to change this kind of thing? How can these silent battles, be exposed, and how can leaders really be aware of those battles and begin to attend and address those battles and be able to help those people who are fighting those silent battles within? Because people leave workspaces when they are broken, when they are discouraged, when they really don't want to be there anymore.
I often propose a two-pronged approach, right? So in as much as your question is saying, what can leaders do? I also want to add to that, what can you do as the person that's going through the situation? But to focus on leaders specifically, it's about being in tune with your employees. And by that, I mean creating a psychologically safe space where people feel that it's okay to share about their challenges, to share about their struggles. And psychological safety is not something that's built overnight. You don't say to people, just talk to me, just feel free with me, tell me everything. if you haven't been intentional about building a psychologically safe space. So psychological safety is built around having an openness to being challenged, right? It's about having an openness to people learning and not making people feel stupid just because they made a mistake, not punishing people when they ask questions, for example. It's also about creating spaces where people feel it's okay for them to belong. So all of these things contribute to psychological safety. And once employees start speaking up and sharing whatever their struggles are, as leaders, we need to ensure that we're trained to deal with that. Because it's one thing people not speaking, but when they start speaking, are you actually equipped to have difficult conversations with people? And that's part of the work that I do. I remember there was a woman I was working with, an organization that I was working with, and there was a woman within that organization who was getting beaten up literally every day at home. Every morning when she's getting ready, the husband would be swearing, screaming at her, punch her. She goes to work. Physically, you could see that something is not right. She's been beaten. So when she opened up to her leader about what was happening, he didn't have the capacity to deal with this. So that's when he realized that he needed to go for training, so that he can navigate these conversations. So as leaders, we need to be equipped to be able to manage these situations. And as the people that are going through the struggle, it's also important for us not to sit there and wait for something to happen. Because in extreme circumstances where we're in environments and spaces where we don't speak our truth, we don't take action, it can lead to sickness and even to death. Every now and then we read in newspapers online. I'm saying newspapers old school. We read online that somebody passed on because of working in a toxic environment. So sometimes in worst case scenarios, the best thing that a person can actually do is walk away from that environment in very extreme circumstances. If you've spoken up, if you've tried, if you've used the processes, the policies that the organization has to try and reconcile, to try and open up about what you're experiencing. But if nothing works, then sometimes the best thing that we can do is walk away.
What you said is very powerful. If you've just joined us, Untold Stories of Hope podcast brought to you by Destiny Connect Foundation with me, Pafimi Dubi, and I'm here with the great Maiyo Febi. We're talking about the inner critic not being your enemy. Oh, come on, man. What a powerful topic. And really, you are an experienced leader because, your reasonings and also your level of wisdom clearly shows that you have been through so much. There's nothing that beats practical experience. You might be academic, you might be whatever it is. As you said, you might speak English fluently and everything, but experience is what makes you to be where you are now. And I'm really impressed by, this conversation because it inspires me as well. So now tell me, Maiyo, through Maiyo, Febi and Associates, you help other organizations, right? And individuals to transform pain points into growth. And this is very much interesting. Can you share a powerful story where someone's mindset shifted completely and it changed the trajectory of their own story?
Again, there's so many, and to pick one. um, so there was an executive that I was working with, and she was newly appointed into a role where suddenly she was at group level and overseeing teams across the continent. And she really struggled to believe in her abilities. So even though she went through the process of interviews and psychometric tests, evaluations, etc., and she ticked all of those boxes, there was something within her that was saying, you're not good enough. You can't do this. This is a fluke. You're going to flop in this new role. So when we went on a coaching journey, what was a transformative moment for her was when, through my questions and through my coaching, I empowered her to see that she was actually not embracing herself. So it wasn't so much about her qualifications, but she didn't feel at home within herself. She didn't trust herself. She didn't value her personality, her life story, her way of seeing the world. So when she felt settled into who she is and she owned her strengths, she owned her values, she owned her personality, her sense of style, and everything about herself, she accepted it. That's when now she could settle into the leadership role. Because for her, she kept thinking, there's a book I need to read, there's a framework I need to understand, there's a theory I need to know about leadership, and then I'll become a great leader. But it doesn't matter how much you know academically, if you don't trust yourself and feel at home within yourself, you'll always feel like there's something else out there that you need to own. I mean, that you need to understand, as opposed to you just accepting that you're an amazing human being, that you are unique, that your stories, your experiences, your values, your way of seeing the world matter. And that's a key component of leadership. And we should allow that to show to the world as leaders. So that's the one story that I can pick on a person who really changed how they see themselves.
That's very powerful, Maiyo. And I'm really grateful that you spoke about quite a number of, good pointers in terms of, the transformation and the testimonies that you are carrying through the efforts that you are bringing into the transformation of others. We are almost wrapping up, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. And I know that the viewers out there, they are also enjoying it. We are learning a lot. We are taking so many nuggets and takeaways because we really want to grow from this. Um, there's a cost, whether the cost of success or the cost of inner peace, whatever it is. What is the cost personally and professionally of not addressing the inner critic, especially for leaders and high performers? Things that we know that we should really get out there, but we decide to keep them within ourselves.
The cost is you. The cost is your joy, your happiness, because as human beings, we're designed to grow, to be expansive, to be successful, whatever success looks like for us as individuals. So if you don't address the inner critic and you don't do the inner work, then you're going to limit your potential, and you're always going to feel like something is missing, like something is in the next thing that you're going to do. And then you'll end up chasing things, thinking that they'll bring you happiness, they'll bring you peace. Whereas in fact, what will bring you peace is if you face your inner critic and you learn to either integrate and deal with whatever it's trying to reveal to you, or you work on silencing its voice and reducing its voice so that you don't even hear it that much. Because sometimes navigating the inner critic is not always about getting rid of it. The inner critic is often parts of yourself that need to heal. It's parts of yourself that you've suppressed, and you haven't been courageous enough to face them. So when you face them and you do that inner work, it creates space for you now to be more of who you want to become. Otherwise, it'll always be that stumbling block, that thing that's just beneath the surface of your life, where you're not always gonna go all out, go full out in things that you're committed to in your life. And it can impact your relationships, your workplace, etc., family dynamics, because the inner critic, when left unchecked, it often becomes incredibly powerful, and you're not even aware of how you're showing up, because now it's taken over you. But when you become aware of it, even in conflicts and situations, for example, you'll learn to understand that it's your inner critic talking. So using mine as an example, the I am not clever enough. When I was in that space, when somebody would say something to me, I would always receive it through the lens of, I am not clever enough. This person thinks I'm stupid. They're disrespecting me. They think I'm not educated. But because of that lens, because of that inner critic that was within me. So addressing it really clears our perception of the world around us and helps us to show up more authentically.
That's powerful. I'm really inspired, and I've heard you very clearly. If there's someone listening out there, Maiyo, and they are just going through a season, and it's really difficult. They have a vision. They've been fighting to get this vision off the ground. There's someone who feels like, there's a woman, there's a girl child somewhere around the globe. They come from, you know, undeveloped areas. They feel like possibilities are far away from them. They feel like opportunities are far away from them. And we've got so many people who are dealing and fighting battles, whether it's depression, whether it's so many difficult things. If someone is listening to you today, Maiyo, and they feel controlled by negative voice in their head, what is the first powerful thing, or what is the first powerful step they can take today to reclaim, their confidence and move forward and be able to conquer and overcome this negative voice, or this voice of exhaustion, or this discouragement they might be facing today?
The first step is really having that awareness. So being able to sit and accept that this is where I am right now. And I think you said that at the beginning when you were talking about your own journey. So without awareness, it's incredibly difficult to move forward. So in that awareness, what are the things that you need to accept? Because a lot of our pain and our suffering as human beings is caused by us not accepting where we are. And one book that I read, The Road Less Traveled, the author, Dr. Peck, even goes as far as saying, as all mental illness is as a result of us not accepting where we are. And I found that to be really, really powerful. So accepting then puts you in a position to map out, okay, if I'm here now, where do I want to be? Where do I want to go? And then from that, we're able to take steps towards something that's better for ourselves. Because if we don't accept where we are, then how will we know what we need to move from? What is the measure to say, I have progressed, if you don't know where you are? So doing that deep inner reflection, that self-awareness, and accepting that this is where you are right now, can really empower you to map out where it is that you want to get to. And when we do map it out, it's so important for us to understand that the way will not appear to us fully once we've accepted it. Because as human beings, we love to have a sense of control and think that we need to see from step 0 to 100. We need to be able to see the entire journey. But because life doesn't work out like that, we end up doing nothing, right? Because we think, oh, but what if this? But what if that? No, I need to be certain. I need to make sure things are in place. But that's not how life works. And when we look at the example of going on a long distant journey, to drive from Johannesburg to Cape Town, for instance, you don't know the exact road, what it's going to look like at every single step of the way. You don't know if there'll be traffic cops, if there'll be an accident on the way, hitchhikers, you name it, anything can happen on the road. But the one thing that you do know is that you have to get in your car, reverse out of your garage, get onto the neighborhood roads, get to the N1, and bit by bit, the road unfolds, right? And you experience it. Yeah. So it's the same thing in life. The first thing is accepting. And then step 1 could be, okay, what do I need to do now? What is my step 1? And when you ask, your mind always answers. Your mind might say, read the book that Maiyo mentioned. Or it could mean, oh, there's a guy I've been following. Let me check out his podcast, whatever it is. And then once you listen to the podcast, the next step will come to you of inspiration. Maybe the guy will say he's offering a free seminar, and then you join that free seminar. In the seminar, you meet someone, and on the steps go, the steps build like that. So it's awareness, accepting where you are, and then taking that first step and trusting that the path will reveal itself, that the road will open up once you've committed to the first step.
That's really powerful. Maiyo, thank you so much. And I believe that many people have learned so much from this conversation today. And how can people contact you? If someone wants to speak to you, they want to email you, your social media, whatever it is, how can anyone, if they feel they want to speak to you, they want to connect with you, how can they reach you and where can they reach you?
I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn with my name, Maiyo Febi. And for bookings, I offer a free 30 minutes exploratory call where we can talk about anything and everything that you want to. So if you go to my LinkedIn page, at the top of my LinkedIn profile, there's a link there which says book exploratory session. It'll give you access to my diary and we can connect there. And also on my website, maiyofebi.com, it's the same link that you'll get where you can book a 30 minutes coffee chat with me.
You've heard it all. Untold Stories of Hope podcast. Destiny Connect Foundation appreciate you. As we come to the end of the show today, I want you to take a moment and reflect on everything that Maiyo has said, not because of lack of ability, but because of your voice that is within. I mean, we spoke about a lot of powerful things today. Maiyo took us through a journey. How many opportunities have we walked away from because we believed a story that was never true? Today, Maiyo reminded us basically of the power that we carry within. And if this episode has challenged you or inspired you, subscribe to Untold Stories of Hope podcast so you never miss conversations like this that can transform you and show you your true potential and help you to reach your destiny. Drop a comment and share your biggest takeaway. We want to hear your voice. This is Destiny Connect Foundation, Untold Stories of Hope podcast. You can say www.destinyconnectfoundation.org. That's our website. Become part of the podcast. My name is Pafimi, and as I said, I'm here all the way from South Africa, and I'm glad Maiyo Febi is also here, and we do a lot of stuff together. I believe that it's going to take off, and we're going to do so many great things, and we are going to really meet a lot of collaborations through this platform. Don't forget to follow us on our social media pages. Just say Destiny Connect Foundation, and if there's anything else that you need, you can always talk to us. And just to acknowledge also the hosts, my colleagues for the podcast, Mr. Zion Enogeru, all the way in Nigeria, and also Miss Florence Masesi Maseko, who are also my co-hosts. And I really want to appreciate them and the technical team that has been helping us so much to achieve this, everything that we do. This has been a great episode, and I believe that we are going to have many other great episodes. I enjoyed my coffee, and I saw Maiyo also enjoyed her coffee, so we had a great conversation, and we are really grateful for everything. Hi guys, Untold Stories of Hope podcast. Thank you so much. We meet again on the next episode. Sharp.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Untold Stories of Hope podcast. We hope you enjoyed and you were inspired by today's conversation. Remember, you can get more access to resources plus join a thriving global community of change makers by visiting our website at destinyconnectfoundation.org. Please subscribe to our channel and spread the word. Don't forget to turn the notification on. Until next time, keep inspiring your world.